Hello, hi, I'm Zinfogel. Alright, this is the last bit of catching up I have to do before moving on to the April data mine. Today we're going to talk about the March Kalos grids. Well then, let's get started. I am in disbelief. DNA gridded Kahili the way they did, and Wulfric got this garbage. They did my boy so dirty, dude. Here we have Wulfric and Avalugg, a 3-star Ice-type striker. When Wulfric's grid got leaked, I got pinged by 5 different people simultaneously. That was so funny, dude. For those new to the channel, Wulfric is my poster child. He is my baby boy. Wulfric stands for everything I represent. Sometimes people ask why I like Wulfric so much. There is no big reason. He has jiggle physics. I also like how this game handled his personality. I just think he's neat. But I can explain myself better with a story. Some time ago, I mostly showcased bad units beating difficult content. People like Lucy, Tate, Candice, Thornton, and that was before DNA released grids for low-tier gachas. I wanted to explore every unit to their fullest potential. Like, of course you can use 6-star EX strikers to clean sweep content, and Signature Blue can carry anybody. But when you build around bad sync pairs, it challenges you. It's sort of like solving a puzzle. How can you justifiably make a bad unit work? Wulfric here is the epitome of what a bad unit looks like. His stats are bad, his buffing kit is bad, his moves are bad, his mechanics are bad, his passives are bad. Yet, in spite of all that, he can off-type to K-Master mode. Wulfric is awful. I am not delusional enough to claim otherwise. But because he's awful, he's fun to play. I don't know, it's just how I am. Before checking Wulfric's grid, we have to understand the Wulfric. Wulfric buffs +4 attack and +3 defense, so he requires crit and gauge support. Ice Fang is inaccurate and weak, but it's got a 10% chance to flinch with a separate 10% chance to freeze. Freeze overrides flinch. Despite the low proc rate, Wulfric can play for crowd control, and the grid expands on that function. Avalanche is the gimmicky part of Wulfric's kit. It's a 2-turn countering move. When you click Avalanche, Avalugg engages a countering posture and waits for the enemy to attack. If Avalugg receives damage during that, it casts Avalanche at double the base power. You can manually disengage the countering posture by clicking Avalanche again, but when you do that, Avalanche hits for its regular base power. Avalanche attacks whomever you were targeting when you first clicked it, so you have to plan your target ahead of time. Boosted Avalanche is decently strong, but the issue is that it's a 2-turn move. These moves suck to use. Avalanche doesn't advance the sync countdown on the attacking turn. Furthermore, 2 Ice Fangs outpace a manual Avalanche. Note Wulfric's try move taunts the enemy. You can have a Wulfric share tanking or enable power reserves. The idea more so is that Wulfric wants to momentarily draw enemy fire to boost Avalanche. So, I am the proud owner of a 5-star 2020 Wulfric, and I can tell you that even at the maximum potential, Wulfric's bulk is just decent. He can handle physical damage, but most Ice Weak stages in Champion Stadium use strong special moves. Wulfric gets sniped very easily. An interesting mechanic with taunting is that if you use Wulfric's try move turn 1 and Avalanche turn 3 when Avalanche counters aggro wears off at the same time, and that animation takes priority over a sync move. Wulfric is then allowed to queue a move without losing sync countdown. There are other ways you can offset Avalanche's turn delays with denials, but for its complexity, you could just be using Getses instead. The only thing Wulfric has going for himself is a decent attack stat. His sync move is good. Wulfric's grid is not helping much here. He has an okay nuking mode with double down 5, it takes no setup, and if you bother with classic red support, Wulfric can delete foes without breaking a sweat. In my experience, this is the only reasonable way of employing Wulfric offensively. On the upper right corner, Wulfric gained a boatload of Ice Fang passives. Ice Fang accuracy plus 5 makes it reliable. Free Synergy 3 sure is a multiplier, and with Wind Aggravation 2 and Hostile Environment 2, Wulfric now has excellent chances to break Havoc. That's 2 separate 30% rolls to proc Flinch or Freeze. This is Wulfric's most useful mode. He can function as a rudimentary flinch bot, but with a freeze synergy angle. Wulfric also has a Hail mode with Snow Shelter, Invigorating Hail 3, and Healing Hail 1, but short of running Palentine's B or Sonia plus Candice, it's hard for Wulfric to partake in Hail archetypes, especially given his support demands. Down this corner, Wulfric gained Avalanche multipliers. Super Duper Effective 2 is simple and easy. Conversely, Power Reserves 2 is miles tougher to set up, although Endurance helps with critical health maintenance. Accounting for Invigorating Hail 3 and both Avalanche multipliers, Wulfric's Booster Avalanche is actually the second strongest Ice-type DPS in the game, after Holiday Leon. But Avalanche is such a logistical nightmare, the output is not worth it. Trust me, dude, I am a Wulfric connoisseur. Lastly, Wulfric has some utility. Sharp Entry 1 provides a +1 crit buff, which pairs nicely with classic red support, but it's somewhat expensive to grab because it's surrounded by a bunch of defensive tiles. With Sentry Entry 1 and Trainer Move Shielding Strikes 2, Wulfric can maximize defense, but he doesn't have a single multiplier derived from the stat. If you raise Wulfric to 5-star potential, he can function as an emergency tank in Legendary Gauntlet, but that's about it. This grid upsets me because it doesn't make Wulfric's job easier. He maximizes defense, but to what end? Ice Weak stages spam special damage. Endurance is okay, but Kahili God, Fear State 4, Sterner Stuff, and Refreshable Endure. Avalanche is strong, but not enough to vindicate the setup. The only thing worth salvaging here is Ice Fang. Wulfric is a perfectly capable flinch bot. He can follow the turn order and stagger enemies with Ice Fang. Wulfric actually does okay damage when giving crit support. If I had to discard a tile, I would drop Ice Fang Free Synergy 3. Wulfric probably won't make use of it, even against isolated targets. If you want to be fancy, you can pair Wulfric with Candice to activate his Hail tiles for more consistent Ice Fang DPS. Candice handles the nuke, and you can round up the core with BP Surge or some such. The combination of Getsis plus Price is generally more effective when handling Ice Weak content, but Wulfric is functional. In Legendary Gauntlet, I would have used Wulfric's grid to buff defense. Flinch is excellent crowd control in nearly every Legendary arena. Freeze is particularly effective against Entei and Qualion. You can use Wulfric as a team filler. For the two people who want to clear Ice Weak content with just Wulfric, I would suggest focusing on the nuke. It's a child's play compared to making Avalanche work. That said, Wulfric is true potency stems from Avalanche. I showcased the off-type. In standard matches, I found that Avalanche space is too slow for too little return in investment, so I brought Anniversary Right Hand for physical move up next stacks to launch one strong Avalanche instead. Avalanche would be easier to use on-type. It's all about timing, sniping enemies at the correct time, but there are easier ways to deal Ice-type damage between Getsis, Price, and Candies. I don't recommend running Avalanche. This is the kind of build I use because I like dumb garbage. Well, I finally got the Wulfric grid I always wanted, but I am not happy about it. I can make a Wulfric work, but he's still a meme. Too bad. Up next, we have Wikstrom Aegislash, a 4-star Steel-type tech. Actually, one of my favorite low-tier gachas. Wikstrom is a tech in its purest form. He is very technical, and in a stark contrast to Wulfric, Wikstrom is so good now. He competes with 5-star gachas. Honestly, I would rather use Wikstrom over Solgaleo or Noni X Steven. DNA implemented Aegislash with a stance change. For those unfamiliar, Aegislash has two forms, shield form and blade form. Aegislash starts out of fight in its shield form, but when it uses an attacking move, it changes to its blade form. However, King's Shield allows it to revert back to its shield form. These forms have wildly different stats catered to their function. Shield is defensive, while Blade dumps its defenses to enhance its offense. Blade Aegislash is very vulnerable to spread and sync damage. DNA replicated a stance change to a T. Aegislash in Masters works exactly the same as in the main series games. And this is what I meant with Wikstrom being technical. His gameplay requires forethought. Are you using him purely as a tank or as a striker? If you are attacking with Wikstrom, you have to remember to use King's Shield before the enemy sinks to restore his defenses. As interesting as Wikstrom is conceptually, he doesn't have the stats or multipliers to justify use. 279 attack is not good. Aegislash struggles to tank because it has no recovery. When Wikstrom tanks, he cannot perform any other actions besides King's Shield if he means to maintain Shield Aegislash. Something important about Aegislash's stats is that a stance change raises attack multiplicatively. Check this out. Max promotion gives Aegislash plus 40 attack, right? But Blade Form Aegislash ends up with 399 attack. As a rule of thumb, Blade Aegislash has triple the attack of its shield form. Potential tickets are huge for Wikstrom. His attack stat can get even crazier when 3-star Steel Gear drops. As for the moveset, Jarwall is not good. It doubles in base power if the enemy raises their speed, which happens often in Steel Weak content, but boosted Jarwall is weaker than Ironhead. Ironhead can flinch, so Jarwall is whatever. King's Shield is used primarily for stance change, but it also acts as a countering move, sort of like Pierce is Obstruct, if you are familiar with that. When you click King's Shield, you enter a countering posture and wait for the enemy to attack. When Aegislash takes a hit, the damage is nullified, and if the move it blocked was physical, you lower the attacker's attack stat by 2 stages. This allows Wikstrom to play for his innate pecking order, but as a 2-turn move, King's Shield has the sync countdown issue. In Champion Stadium, you can work around that with the gradual healing option, provided King's Shield doesn't proc an attack debuff or a secondary effect. Wikstrom can queue an action during the regen animation. If you give Wikstrom Head Start 1 as a lock skill, you can make up the turn lost blocking with King's Shield. King's Shield expands Wikstrom's utility. Aegislash has innate vigilance, so it's a very consistent tank. Lastly, Wikstrom's Trainer move works in tandem with stance change. If Aegislash is in its shield form, Wikstrom buffs +2 defenses. If Aegislash is in its blade form, Wikstrom buffs +3 attack and +1 crit. Wikstrom is a striker cycle typically involves Gyro Ball, Trainer move. He is largely self-sufficient and just needs help topping off crit. Wikstrom is very interesting. The problem here is that his attack stat and lack of multipliers holds him back. Solgaleo is just a more consistent striker. But Wikstrom's grid changes everything. Wikstrom got such a good grid. It's even better than Candice's, and it sets a new standard for low-tier gachas. Something I love about Wikstrom's grid is that his utility is divided by clusters. It doesn't twist your arm into making awkward grading decisions for a specific passive. Wikstrom gained Sharp Entry 1. Remember his trainer move buffs +6 attack and +2 crit in 2 blade form uses. With Sharp Entry 1, Wikstrom is fully self-sufficient, unlike most steel-type strikers. But now Wikstrom has not 1, not 2, but 4 multipliers to enhance his damage. Critical Strike 2 is debatably the best multiplier in the game. It's simple and it boosts move and sync damage. Super Duper Effective 3 and Double Down 5 are easy, non-conditional multipliers. I don't expect people to use Striker Wikstrom outside of Steel Week content, but if you do, you can run Ironhead Harry 3 backed by Ironhead Aggravation 1. Wikstrom now has a 60% chance to flinch. He can deal good damage while flinch locking enemies. Note that plus attack grid tiles are not multiplied by a stance change. Wikstrom gains more damage from gridding Ironhead base power tiles instead. The upper left corner has Wikstrom is tanking utility. He now has Trainer move Barricade and Shielding Strikes, so he can maximize his defenses reliably. Trainer move NPR3 is less useful as a result. King's Shield NPR3 is amazing, and Terrify 1 debuffs the enemy field is attacked by 1 stage upon entry. Block and Launch will never proc, so don't bother. King's Shield Inspire Ire is really fun. Wikstrom can draw aggro and share tanking duties. Let's say that you're running Wikstrom with Hilbert. Hilbert takes care of Wikstrom's offensive buffs, so what Wikstrom can do instead is draw aggro, spare Hilbert from some damage, and debuff attack during the interim. And by the time Inspire Ire wears off, Wikstrom can start attacking with Ironhead. That maneuver is risk-free because of King's Shield is blocking mechanics. Inspire Ire Wikstrom doesn't have to polarize between offense or defense, and it opens doors for some very interesting strategies. Lastly, if you grab every single Gyro Ball tile, boosted Gyro Ball is stronger than Ironhead. Gyro Ball trades the ability to flinch for gauge efficiency, but Ironhead Aggravation 1 is one of Wikstrom's strongest selling points, so make of that what you will. Striker Wikstrom wants multipliers. Harry 3 is the least consistent, so we skip that. With Sharp Entry 1, Wikstrom doesn't require any offensive support. You can run him with defensive units like Skyla or Dawn. Double Drop Getsis is a good third to enhance Wikstrom's innate pecking order. You should always run Ironhead Aggravation 1 so Wikstrom can consistently stagger enemies and delay damage. By the way, back when Palentine's Marnie dropped, I didn't mention Wikstrom as a partner. The reason is that 1-5 Palentine's Marnie outnukes gridless Wikstrom, but with Critical Strike 2 and Double Down 5, Wikstrom now nukes harder than 1-5 Palentine's Marnie. If you have her, Wikstrom can skip Sharp Entry, Marnie maximizes Wikstrom's grid with Team Sharp Entry 1 instead. Marnie can then debuff with Growl to enhance pecking order. But if your Palentine's Marnie is at 3-5, Wikstrom is better off running linear DPS or whatever. Alternatively, you can run Wikstrom as a tank. Barricade and Shielding Strikes maximize his defenses. You want King's Shield NPR3 to block continuously, and Terrify 1 for the entry attack debuff. Wikstrom has a good matchup against physical foes. It might seem counterintuitive, but I recommend Terrain Move Point Refresh 3 as well. When Wikstrom tanks, he never ever wants to break his shield form. Terrain Move NPR3 is the only other action available besides King's Shield that won't engage Blade Form Aegislash. Wikstrom can help advance the sync countdown with that. Off-type, Wikstrom favors flinching modes to proc Harry Tree. He partners really well with BP Zinnia. She has a 40% chance to flinch with Terrify 2. By using King's Shield Inspire Ire, Wikstrom can relieve pressure of your tank and debuff attack further to boost BP Zinnia's power posture, which in turn benefits Wikstrom's pecking order. Wikstrom is really fucking good. I would invest in him before Solgaleo. Honestly, Steven now needs his 6-star EX to compete with Wikstrom. That probably speaks poorly of Steven more than anything else, but I love this grid. This is a case where the base unit is just good enough that the grid can pivot off that to make the unit great. Last but not least, we have Ramos and Victreebel, a 3-star grass-type tech. I have to make Ramos justice for Fue Boomer, I owe it to him. So, Ramos is a globally shitty sync pair, barring one aspect of his kit. Ramos' purpose is spamming Sleep to prevent damage. Sleep Powder is 75% accurate. It's more consistent than Aggravation 1 Astonish, for which sync pairs like Acerola and Custom Lily are lauded for. But the difference with Sleep is that you can make it 100% reliable. You can give Ramos Troublemaker 1 or Pinpoint Entry 2 as a lucky skill to land Sleep Powder reliably. Ironically, Ramos' greatest competitors are Sleep Eggmons. Tech Executor and Tech Venusaur have Troublemaker 1 innately. Ramos' grid makes Sleep Powder 100% accurate, so Ramos can claim his rightful throne as the most accessible, accurate sleeper in the game. But why is Sleep so powerful? Back in the day, we're talking Battle Villa metagame, Fue Boomer was one of the very first players to explore the potential of staggering. He made a bid on Ramos to prove the viability of Sleep. You can use Sleep to nullify enemy damage and gain extra turns. With very good timing, you can Sleep lock enemies to stop attacks altogether. I am not going to dwell on sleep chaining, that could be its whole separate video. If you're curious, I am going to leave a CX's sleep guide in the description. But if you have a basic understanding of the turn order, you can use sleep to cheese endgame content like 2K Master Mode and Legendary Gauntlet. The rest of Ramos' kit is not worth humoring. His stats are not good. He's a little tankier than most sleep abusers, but his speed is average, which is concerning for sleep chains. Ramos can buff +4 speed, +4 attack, and apply regeneration. Regeneration disrupts sleep chains in a couple specific instances, but ultimately the recovery is nice. Bullet Seed is pathetic. Ramos has innate Rude Awakening and Defense Crush 2 to pretend he's got some utility. Now, Ramos' grid turns him into a premium Eggmon. He can make Sleep Powder 100% accurate without resorting to lucky skills. He's more consistent at his job. I will go over Ramos' other modes for completion's sake. Ramos has First Aid 2 for emergency recovery. I would have preferred Endurance, but oh well. Ramos has a Sun mode with Healing Zone 1 and Speeding Zone 2. This is Ramos' only way of supplying gauge, so he plays well with Solar Ice partners like Lyra or Silver. Trainer move Berserker 1 lets Ramos maximize attack reliably. Ramos has an okay nuking mode with Double Down 3 and Rude Awakening 3. He nukes about as hard as OG Dianta. There are some Bullet Seed tiles, Super Duper Effective 2 and Good Nightmare 3, but lacking no Carter, Ramos' DPS is ineffective. Imagine going through all the effort of setting up the sleep conditional used to land a couple Bullet Seeds. Gardenia and Silver are just better free-to-play grass-type strikers. Lastly, Ramos has Bullet Seed Defense Crush 3. This can be fun. Ramos can perform as a bruiser. If you give him Defense Crush 2 as a lucky skill, he has 3 separate checks for rolling defense debuffs. That's about a 70% chance of debuffing defense by at least -1. But personally, I would rather run Leer or Screech. I suggest steering clear from Bullet Seed. Defense Crush debuffs are inconsistent and the damage doesn't make up for that flaw. Maybe you can have Ramos counter Latias' Fluid Fortification, but that's about it. As for Ramos' lucky skill, it's not as obvious as with other sync pairs. Ramos doesn't need Troublemaker 1 anymore. I will recommend Move Gauge Refresh 2 or Speedy Entry 2. Headstart 1 is also good. If you stagger an enemy into a trainer move in the first couple turns, Ramos can help you reach First Sync a turn earlier, sort of like Headstart 1 Acerola. Ramos is most consistent when playing for Sleep. You want Sleep Powder Accuracy plus 15 and Pinpoint Entry 1 for perfect accuracy. Sleep Powder MGR 3 helps with gauge. Outside of that, the best we can do is improve Ramos' stats. Ramos can raise speed by 35 points. Typically, I would never recommend grading speed, but given Ramos' function, it's the best he has to work with. With the spare energy, we can grid First Aid 2 and add some bulk. You can also partner Ramos with Solar Ice Lyra. Speeding Zone 2 generates gauge. The pattern I did here grabs every speed tile. Now, if you want to make Fue Boomer proud, we can turn Ramos into a striker. He needs an auxiliary sleep partner to reliably land Rude Awakening. I recommend Tech Bellsprout for grass theme skills and Springborg to handle crit and accuracy. So, Ramos plays the same as when he was ungraded. I will spam him more often in free-to-play guides, but there is nothing revolutionary going on here. Ramos' offense remains bad, which is okay, because that was never his purpose. And with that, I am officially done with the March data mine in the month of April. Yay for me. Next week, we're going to cover the April data mine, so look forward to that. Thank you for watching, take care, and I hope to see you another time.